Yo, what's up, everybody? How's it going? Welcome to the Bad Chess Podcast. I am your host, Katie215. Wow, that music cut out short. I don't know what happened there. Anyway, hi. This is the second episode of the Bad Chess Podcast. Tonight, we have one of my favorite people on the planet. She is amazingly talented. I first saw her on Broadway and Avenue Q long before we ever had the opportunity to work together. She just has done amazing things in voiceover work, in puppetry, in act. Everything. Listen, she's got a sizzle reel that she said she did 10 years ago. I think it's hysterical. I'm gonna let this do the explaining for you if you don't know who you are, and or if you don't know who she is, and we're gonna roll it now. This is great.
It is never any fun. 2004 Tony. When you can't be number one. Those two. Always seen as second best. Always being second guessed.
Idina Menzel.
And in every single race, two is always second place. You gotta make that basket stronger. Make it last much longer. Just a city cheap. Starting words like gingerbread. Let's all go to dress up corner and let's all dress up. That's an outrage!
They get you, Mary.
That's impossible!
Chicken, have an enchanted day.
I don't care. Don't you recognize me?
I'm so all alone.
So long, fellas!
Mary had a little lamb.
All aboard the Holiday Train Show at the New York Botanical Garden.
New Nivea My Silhouette with BioSlim Complex. Touch and be touched.
Have an alfresco lunch and check out the delightful shop. Come for an afternoon in sunny Italy.
Tonight at 9 p.m., 6 Pacific.
It's a pen that erases. The 80s are gonna rock!
I'm here with the neighborhood watch. Little fur. Yeah.
Yes!
Yeah. Oh, no.
Larry, put some pants on!
I'll come back.
Dr. Cox, you gotta help me, because I really am distressed. Can't you find another option? Won't you run another test?
If you want some kind of favor, really any kind of favor, please just get me peace and quiet from this godforsaken past.
Shut your cake hole, Mary Beth, or I swear to God I'll shut it soon.
Monsters, happy monsters.
Happy
Monsters, happy monsters. Monsters, happy monsters.
Any thoughts?
It scares the out of me.
Ladies and gentlemen, Stephanie DeBruzzo, how are you?
Hi, Caitlin. Wow. Yeah, I edited that all by my little self.
Did you?
I did. And I'm actually, that's my deep, dark side of me, to begin a reel about myself losing the Tony. I was very proud of that.
You know, I
Because I love that
just wanna
song. It was a great way to use the song.
I just want to preface this for all the viewers. When I asked her to do the podcast, her response was, well, I don't do podcasts, so I don't want to do podcasts all that much anymore because everyone asks the same questions and I'm taking a break. And so I promised her this wouldn't be like any other podcast she's done. So I'm going to have to ask a question that I don't know if you've been asked this before, but if we go back to 2004, Avenue Q at the Tonys, obviously you lost to Idina Menzel. We saw that there, but Avenue Q won Best Musical that year.
Yeah.
As the 20 years have gone by since then, 19 years, Wicked it's still huge today as it was then.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you robbed the Tony? I just want to know.
You know, it's funny. Back then when we won, I heard a lot of there was a lot of David and Goliath comparison because we were a little show with a smaller budget and a smaller theater, and they were this big fancy show. And there were people who were like, yeah, David beat Goliath. And I never thought of it as a competition. We only stayed open because we had, let's just say, a lot of people came to Avenue Q who lost the Wicked lottery. So, who couldn't get into Wicked. So we were grateful. A good Broadway season raises all boats. So there was no animosity, no competition as far as the cast was concerned. But we were hearing a lot of, yeah, you beat the big show. And years later, now people freaking hate that we beat Wicked. Who's this little nothing puppet show beating our beloved Wicked? Like, I don't have anything to do with it. I never even saw the Tony until I went to see a show at the Vineyard. It's not like the Stanley Cup. I didn't get to hold it. It didn't get to keep it overnight. It doesn't come with a blank check or even a cookie. You know, it's great, but and it was great for us, I suppose, because it helped us run a little longer. I don't think Wicked was going to have any problems running. You know, I think sometimes a Tony can help a show run, but I've also seen shows win Tonys and close. An award doesn't make good work better, and and lack of it doesn't make good work worse. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
But yeah, there are people who legitimately hate it now. And I'm sorry. That's all I can say is I'm sorry.
So obviously Avenue Q, it's not even off Broadway anymore, correct? I mean, it's
No, it closed at New World Stages. It transferred to New World Stages, I think, at the end of 2009, and it closed in 2019.
So I saw obviously the original cast, and then I saw it a couple other times through the years. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I think what you guys did that was different. And then I swear we're getting off this talk, so it's not like any other podcast. But I feel like what was different about the original cast and then all future casts is the original cast were a lot of really skilled puppeteers, and you guys were used to working with puppets, and you were used to working around people in puppets. And you put the puppets out front, right? Like you were not trying to shine over the puppets, where I feel like in later casts, it was like a competition. Like you were paying less attention to the puppet and more attention to the actors and actresses playing the roles, which I feel like took away from what the show was supposed to be. And you didn't have that with the original cast. And I'm not saying everybody, you know, there were some great puppeteers that stuck with that show for a long time. Yeah. Just the general feel of the show, I think, changed when they kind of went from that.
That's interesting that you say that, and that you had that perspective. You know that world, and maybe you might have been more attuned to it than the average theater goer. You might have. I think you have a little more savvy, knowing the puppeteers and knowing that world. But that's kind of you to say. We always, you know, whether it's Avenue Q or Sesame or whatever we do, it's character first. And we were just supporting the character. So, and also, to be perfectly honest, just physically having the character a little forward rather than doing this is better. You know, I would tuck in on scenes where I didn't have a lot to do, but you can't perform like this because of just the ergonomics. And I will hear from college students doing the show who, you know, are expected to do this with 2 weeks of training, who've never puppeteered before, 3 weeks of training, maybe a month. And again, they all want to do this because they think that they have to put their face next to the character. And I get it, you know, I get it. But it's a culture. And I think that the puppeteers who originated the show, it wasn't that we were trying to hide ourselves. It's just, our culture is character first. And you have to believe, because you have to work so hard to get people to believe that this inanimate object on your hand is the character, and that I am supporting this character. So that's very kind of you to notice that. I don't know that many other people did, but, you know, look, I don't think it hurt the run. So I'm not a good judge of that.
I mean, you are right. I do have a little bit of, I mean, I've been on Sesame Street now, I think close to 20 years. When did you start on Sesame? How long have you been on Sesame?
93. 93 was my first. Yeah. So it's 30 years for me. My first day I did a home video in June of 93. And my first day on the set was November 93. It was the first year they were at Kaufman.
Was it?
Yeah.
The intimidating thing about Sesame Street is I've been on the show. It's less than 20 years, right? Because I did not know anybody from Sesame when I went to Avenue Q, and so it's getting close to 20 years.
Right.
But even at 20 years, you still feel like you're the new person when you walk in there.
I still feel like I'm the new person. I really do. And it's weird because people, you know, we have all these new puppeteers who've come in and they're looking at me like I'm the elder statesman, and I'm not. I don't feel like I'm in that position. I certainly don't, you know, I know that I'm older than Fran Brill was when I met her. I think now I'm older than Frank Oz was when I met him. It's very sobering.
Frank Oz is an interesting guy. I feel like there are people that you either love him or you hate him. You either have had the best experience in the world with him or you've had the worst. He obviously he doesn't. I mean, I don't think he comes to Sesame at all anymore. But in the beginning, he came around like once a year. I feel like he would do something, and he was always the most pleasant man to me. He even signed something for my brother once. He signed a Yoda figure, which everybody said don't do that. And I was like, listen, my brother is the biggest Star Wars fan in the world, and I didn't care enough about the job at that point to where I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it. And everyone's like, oh, he doesn't really sign. He was just so pleasant about it.
Well, the one thing that I learned about Frank, and that I learned from Frank, was that he'll sign it if it's to someone and if it means something to someone. He has so many autograph hounds who were just asking for his autograph to sell on eBay. And the one thing that I learned from him before I did Avenue Q, just by example, is he just said, look, I'll sign something, but I want to sign it to someone. And that's what I started to do. I mean, you know, obviously I'd sign playbills at the door, but they're all rumpled up. But I would occasionally get in the mail these really cryptic letters just asking for autographs, not to anyone, or saying, oh, this is for my friend, but I don't know how to spell his name, so just write your name. And you just know they're going to sell it. Joke's on them. My autograph doesn't sell. But that's beside the point. I knew that our cast, we would sell signed posters for Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. So I knew that our signatures were valuable to raise money for really worthy causes, for the Actors Fund or for Phyllis Newman Women's Health Initiative. And I learned, like, yeah, I'll send you a photo, but I'll sign it to someone. And so when people would pull that, oh, sign it to my friend, I don't remember how to spell their name, I would say, to Victor's friend who doesn't remember how your name is spelled, sorry. And I learned that from Frank. There was a time my husband Craig Shemin was doing an interview with Frank for the Museum of the Moving Image, and Frank came over to, you know, as sort of assist with the video compilations that Craig was putting together. And we have a lot of pop culture stuff in our apartment, and he just happened to notice some Star Wars stuff, and he just picked up something and just signed it. Craig has this old vinyl Yoda, just got out a Sharpie and signed it, and like, okay. So I think it depends on how he's approached, and if he's being approached with the respect and love as you were, you know, and the kindness, in doing something for your brother who's a true fan and having it be from a personal place, I think that he understands that. But if someone's just trying to exploit him, then that's a different story. I mean, no one likes to be exploited. Lesson for the day. If you learn one thing today, no one likes to be exploited. Boom.
You know, ironically, the guest I had on last week, I jokingly call her Mark Hamill's best friend. So we had a whole conversation about Mark Hamill. This week, the second episode, now we're having a whole conversation about Frank Oz. This is not a Star Wars podcast, but
I mean, by all accounts, Mark Hamill's the nicest person. Craig worked with him briefly on a Disney Channel interstitial, and he had lovely experiences with Mark. And then I remember we were working on The Wobulous World of Dr. Seuss in 1997 in New York, and that was when the special editions were coming out. So a bunch of the crew, we got together on a Saturday. We were in line at the Ziegfeld Theater, I guess it was for Return of the Jedi, so this would have been 1998. And I don't know if you remember the Saturday Night Live where they did an episode that Mark Hamill appeared in, and QVC was selling Star Wars merchandise, and then they had Mark Hamill for sale. So that was happening later that night. This guy passes by the line, right? Just passes by the line. We're all wearing like Jim Henson Company jackets too, by the way. Passes by the line, sees our group, looks at us. This the line for Jedi? Keeps walking. We realize it's Mark Hamill. Who's just by that point halfway down the block. No one's gonna catch him. And it was just such a cool thing that he could, tease the fans in that very cool way.
You mentioned that
he was headed SNL.
You mentioned you did the Webulous World of Dr. Seuss. You voiced Velma once in Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo Adventures. You did Pooh, Sesame Street. I mean, I feel like you've done every legendary child's or like you know what I'm saying, right? Like why can't I talk today? Wow, live really stinks in a podcast. Like
it's okay.
Every fandom of childhood, right? Dr. Seuss, Sesame Street, Winnie the Pooh. There you are. Like
plenty I haven't done, but I guess I've done. It's funny the Scooby thing was a one-off. We were hoping it was going to be a series, and it turned into a straight-to-DVD movie. But we had so much fun on it. It's interesting. We shot that 10 years ago, and that's become canon in the Scooby world, and that's fascinating to me. That this thing that we all, had a really good time doing is taken so seriously by the Scooby fans. I'm very glad that it seems like, I'm sure that there are people who don't like it, but the people that I've talked to, or the ones who have reached out to me anyway, have enjoyed it. Seuss was an interesting adventure, very different from season to season. Book of Pooh, I only did the voice of Cassie. I didn't do the puppetry. That's a long story as to why. I did a little bit on Bear in the Big Blue House, not much. What's fascinating is that now a lot of stuff that I did in the late 90s, early 2000s, there are people who are in their early 20s who remember this from when they were little, and it just sort of hits you. Oh yeah, so, I know how math works, but I can't. Yeah, it's hard to deal with.
You mentioned the room that you were in is you built it pre-pandemic, and you used it for voiceover work, and now you use it for a lot of your Zooming stuff, which is great. And you mentioned Donkey Hodie. I mean, how's that going? It's still active, right?
We just wrapped season 2 of Donkey Hodie. There are 5 episodes of season 2 that aired on PBS Kids last month. There will be more episodes in 2024. I'm really happy because season 1, it was a very long production, and we started in late 2019. We were shooting January, February, March of 2020. Obviously shut down for COVID, and then the show, my characters, I play Duck Duck and Harriet primarily. Those characters aren't in every episode, so there were a bunch of episodes that I wasn't in, and then between the travel restrictions that I think have been very quickly forgotten by so many people, I was reminding people, remember when you had to quarantine for 14 days if you landed on a plane, if you took a plane and you went to a different city? Some places you had to quarantine for 2 weeks, some 7 days. Between the travel restrictions and then my health concerns and then Helpsters, I wasn't able to get out very much for most of the continuing first season of Donkey. I did a handful of episodes. So season 2, I was there for every single one. Even if I wasn't in it, I was assisting or doubling a character. So I'm so happy. And I get to play a lot of other little surprise characters that are coming up. But Duck Duck is officially my favorite character my favorite puppet character that I've ever played of all time. I could play her until I die. I love her. I love the people there. We shoot it in Chicago at WTTW. Just so everybody knows, it's on the public television contract of SAG-AFTRA, which is not affected by the strike, as well as the public television contract on Writers Guild. So again, we were lucky we were not affected by the current strike action. But I'm really happy working on that show for all the reasons. We have an amazing group of people. Thank you for asking about
Well,
it.
it's also got to be a cool show too, because you're a native of Pittsburgh, and that's a
Yeah,
Fred
you've
Rogers
done your
production,
homework, yeah.
right? And
Yes.
Mr. Rogers is from Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah. And so when they told me that I would also be playing Harriet Elizabeth Cow, which is a reimagined Harriet Elizabeth Cow, if you remember the original Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood Harriet, she was a school marm. She had the little bonnet. She was very soft-spoken. She was actually voiced and performed by a man named Bob Troe, who also played Bob Dog, and he appeared on it, and Bob Troll, and appeared as himself. And so when they were reimagining this character, and she's got this hot pink hair, and she's an artist, and in preschool television nowadays, they don't like to hear dialects on television. But I said, look, in honor of Fred, and you gotta have some Pittsburgh, because if you listen back to those old shows, you can hear a little Pittsburgh in Fred, but you definitely hear it in Chef Brockett. I mean, there's a whole episode every time they're baking, hey, we're making donuts today, Fred. Oh, today we're making snow pudding, Fred. So I wanted to give Harriet a bit of a what we call a Yinzer accent. So Harriet's talking like this and going over there. I'm gonna go teach an art class, and they let me do it, which is great. Because I love bringing some Pittsburgh into her and into the show.
You mentioned the Yinzer dialect. Pittsburgh is interesting because it definitely has its own language that is so far removed from everything else in Pennsylvania. Like even weird words, like when you go to a store and you're pushing your little shopping cart, what do you call it in Pittsburgh?
Well, some people call it a trolley. I don't, but some people call it. We called it a shopping cart.
Did you?
I don't know. Yeah, but it depends. I had a music teacher who would say "warsh" instead of "wash." I didn't grow up saying "warsh." There's some. It's interesting. It's very variable. Some people's are thicker than others, but some people, the little nozzle to turn on the hose in the backyard, calling it a spigot, which is different from your faucet. Some people would call the indoor sink faucet a spigot. Not all. Some would. It's there's not all Pittsburghers have the same Yinzer.
How do you feel about Permane Brothers?
It's funny because I grew up in the suburbs and we didn't really drive downtown a whole lot. So I didn't get to experience Permane Brothers the way other people did. I mean, parking in the Strip District, my mother was not going to drive to the Strip District just to get a sandwich with French fries on it. So the fact that it's now a chain and well known for it, I don't know. That's not what I go back to Pittsburgh for. There's a family-owned candy company called Saris Candies in Cannonsburg, PA. We sold their candy bars and thespians. And I don't know if you've been there when I've brought in the chocolate-covered pretzels from there at Sesame.
I'm not sure. No, I don't think so.
You might not have. Sometimes I'll put them on the craft service table or have them in the Muppet Room. It is the best milk chocolate you will ever have. In fact, they will not ship it if it's over 72 degrees because there is no wax in it. There are no preservatives. It's this family candy company. And if you go to the place and they sell it everywhere if you go to the Pittsburgh airport, like they have this great big kiosk, but they'll also sell it at the grocery stores and the drug stores. So it's pretty ubiquitous. But it's very, family, very old school Pittsburgh. And so I love sharing that with people and bringing in candy from my hometown, or going back and like the cookie tables. I was a big thing growing up in an Italian family, and having the cookie tables at a wedding, or there's something called Lady Locks. It's a cookie called Lady Lock, and it's like a cream horn of varying sizes, and I can't really describe it any other way. It does not exist in New York as far as I know. It's a very Pittsburgh thing.
Pittsburgh's an interesting city too, because it really is a hotbed of television that nobody realizes. So, Fred Rogers is from Pittsburgh.
They shot Night of the Living Dead there.
NEP, which is the largest live events and broadcast services company in the world, is based in, it's actually in Harmer, but its mailing address is Pittsburgh. Yeah, it's based, it owns so many buildings. It builds all of its trucks at the University of Pittsburgh Applied Research Center.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Should have known that. Take away my Pittsburgh card. I mean, again, I only spent the first 17 years of my life there. I don't get back there as often as I'd like to.
Yeah, only the first 17 years. It's nothing.
Well, at least I was there during the heyday. I was there during the City of Champions. I was there when it was named Most Livable City. I got a couple of Pittsburgh Someplace special shirts that I like to wear on the set of Donkey. I like to show that little Pittsburgh pride. But the other nice thing about shooting it in Chicago, I went to Northwestern in Chicago. And so we stay, not far from campus when I'm in town. And so that's a big part of my life too. So these major parts of my life glommed together on this show is, I don't know, it's a really nice thing to have it be so personal for me. Chicago's a great town too.
We've never talked about this show before, but you have a passion in your eyes as you're talking about this show that I've never seen. And we've talked about a lot of your work. I love your stuff. I think you are immensely talented.
Thanks. That's very kind of you.
When I came up with the idea of doing the podcast, you were one of the people that I really wanted to have on, just because as I said, my first experience of you was definitely Avenue Q. And I will always remember you have a song in Avenue Q that I have to believe has made more people cry than any other song in modern Broadway. It just was
cry.
No, it was just, it happened to me twice in my life.
Aww.
With that song. Yeah, it's just, and what's interesting about that song, not that I want to go like other podcasty with you, that ends kind of act 2 of that play, if I recall correctly, right? So
it ends act 1. It ends
act 1. Yeah, act 1, sorry, and that it's not an ensemble song at all, and it's kind of like a downer, which you don't typically get in a musical.
Right.
And it was, kind of a bold choice, and you carried it so well, and I can't be the only person that's ever said that song really hits hard sometimes.
Well, and that's always I'm very honored to hear that. I didn't write it. I can't take full responsibility for that. Bobby and Jeff deserve the credit for that. And
sure.
And Jason and Jeff Whitty deserve the credit for how they placed it. That we had the songs, a lot of the songs before the shape of the show really gelled. The show went through so many iterations in its development, and so songs were placed all over the place. And so the fact that Fine Fine Line wound up ending Act 1, we didn't know that was going to be the case. So that, I had nothing to do with that. I was really lucky to get to perform it at all, let alone originate it. And I know my version is not everybody's favorite version. I recognize that. Certainly, I've heard it tangentially.
It's my favorite.
But, well, thank you. I appreciate that. And, I've sung it out of character, not as Kate in other venues. And I feel that it's a little different for me. I enjoy doing it out of character. I enjoy doing it in character. It's wonderful when you are asked to sing a song that you genuinely enjoy performing. It's a tricky song, but I love it.
Is that your favorite song from Avenue Q?
To sing? Oh, my favorite song from Avenue Q? I really like I Wish I Could Go. I think I Wish I Could Go Back to College is the song that always hits me, because it's the song that's the truest to me. Fine Fine Line is my favorite for other reasons, but if you were to look at the whole show and what I really identified with more than anything else at the time I was singing it, I thought of my college friends every night I sang I Wish I Could Go Back to College. Where I came from and yeah.
For me, the song that strikes me the most is "The Internet's for Porn," but
that is a lot of people's favorite. That is the favorite of a lot of people.
I didn't say that was my favorite. I just said that's the song I can relate to the most. The Internet.
You are not alone. No. You are not alone. And you are not the first person to say that.
Isn't that the point of the song?
Yeah. That's okay. That's what's wonderful about the show is, that personal connection that people have.
They say, historically speaking, porn is what pushes mediums, right? Like,
sure,
printing presses got bigger with porn.
Sure.
Film,
cable,
like
VHS,
cable TV, like the internet.
Yeah,
it's an interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Not that I wanted to talk to you. How do we go from Donkey Hodie to?
Well, Avenue Q is the tangent to all inappropriate conversations. Can all just
Avenue Q
spin out from that.
Is I don't think you could do it today. I don't think Avenue Q could be done today.
No,
or premiere today. I mean, you could do it today, obviously, because it was written 20 years ago, but I don't think you could premiere it today.
Well. It just didn't age well, is the better way to say it. Do you know what I mean? I think that there are representations and that like, for example, we did Seth Rudetsky's Stars in the House a few weeks ago to raise money in the wake of the Maui wildfires. So sorry, Maui wildfires. I can speak. And we did a sing through. And every time someone starts talking about everyone's a little bit racist now, especially in the last 5 years or so, my feeling is that if that song were to be written today, the intention behind it is really more everyone's a little implicitly biased rather than the words racist. Because you have, I've heard people say you have a black character being accused of being racist, that brings up a lot of sensitivity issues with, what is racism? And now I have also said in the past, what's interesting about that song is that nowhere is it written in the pantheon of musical theater that all characters need to be perfect.
Sure.
And that all characters constantly need to set the fine example. So the fact that these characters are flawed and probably a little obtuse and maybe singing something that's a little it was inappropriate at the time. It's more inappropriate now. The hope is that you don't laugh because it's inappropriate. The hope is that it makes you, if it's something that makes you think, if it's a song that makes you think, well, why are these characters singing that? Why are they so obtuse? That's something to take with you after the show. And hopefully that doesn't stop you cold, or maybe it does. I don't know. But certainly theater is supposed to make you think. And when old musicals get sort of revamped along the way, when they did My Fair Lady and they changed some things, when they did Carousel, they changed some things. Musicals are really a representation of their time. For better, for worse, for right or wrong. And it's one of the reasons why when TCM shows a Warner Brothers film that has blackface in it, they have a really excellent featurette that talks about the history of blackface in cinema, the history of blackface in vaudeville, the stain and shame of that choice to show it, but they choose to not cut it. They're showing it in context, because if you cut it, you don't want to forget that it existed. And we cannot fix the future unless we learn from the mistakes of our past. So when other people do productions of Avenue Q and they say, oh, well, we should cut this or we should trim this, Well, Avenue Q is a period piece now. It just is. It's 20 years old. It's representing a time before there was awareness that maybe we should have had. So that's my 2 cents about it. I know that other people will disagree with many things. I'm not saying I'm 100% right. I'm not saying I'm 100% wrong. It's a conversation. And if theater can't start conversations, then why are we doing theater?
And you're not wrong. There are lots of musicals that are period pieces. Anything Goes, I feel like is a great period piece, and I think there's a lot in that musical that would be questionable today. But when you look at it
With
through
all
the
the
lens
misogyny and
but through the lens of something that was written, I believe they started writing that 10 years before it came out. So
Yeah.
I mean, it was written 100 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
And it's a great musical. It's one of my top 5 favorite musicals. Anything Goes. I love that. Musical.
I mean, I think if you take a show in context, if you take a show in the spirit in which it was written and think, okay, well, yeah, yikes, that's wrong, but you can't whitewash that stuff. You can't just sponge it away. It was part of it. Now, something that's going to be extremely harmful or evoke violence is an entirely different story. Something that's going to romanticize that. But again, everything is going to be subjective. And really, theaters have a choice with what they decide to put on. And if you like some of the songs from Anything Goes, but feel like the book is troublesome, hey, do a review. I don't know. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation, and I think that I would be more interested in seeing if anybody wanted to revisit the Avenue Q characters to see what would be happening with them now, rather than doing a revival. That's just me. But who the hell cares what I think? It's not my decision. I have no power over it.
I would also like to point out that my other favorite song from Avenue Q is one that wasn't in the United States. It was what the time, which was Nikki in the bathroom.
That song.
No, I love that song. I just wanted to throw that out there.
They wanted to know. Well, they tried to put that in when we were developing the show off Broadway, and
really,
and I think they tried to put it in Vegas. I'm trying to remember whether they successfully put it in Vegas or whether they didn't put it in Vegas. I just wasn't a fan of it, but that's just me.
Well,
who the hell cares what I think? It wasn't that. It was that it was unnecessary.
Fair. So look, one of the things that we like to do on this show is open up to chat for some questions. I've also had some questions submitted before, and I've explained to you the rules beforehand, but I'm going to explain them to all of the viewers and listeners. We have on the screen a D20. It is a 20-sided die. We can roll it at random, and you can see numbers pop up. We are going to set the magic number today at 11 for no reason at all. If, when you ask the question, we will roll the dice. If it is an 11 or higher, it is for a knowledge check. Stephanie can answer the question. She knows the answer. If it is under an 11, she does not know the answer to a question and has to then make it up because she still wants to answer your question. She doesn't want to leave you hanging. She wants to answer this. So
you're making a lot of assumptions that I know answers to questions, so I'm a little nervous about this.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't even know what the questions are going to be because it's chat. Okay. So we're gonna go. There is a question that somebody submitted to me on direct message for some reason, which I thought was hysterical, and I need to ask this question talking about Avenue Q. If a puppet only has 4 fingers, how in fact do they give somebody the middle finger? And we're going to roll the D20 and see if you can answer. And it is a 1. It is a natural 1. You don't know how they can give the middle finger, but go ahead.
So, You're saying how can they give a middle finger if they only have 4 fingers? So what they do is they take half of one finger and half of another finger, and they sort of peel the non-halves off and to create the illusion of a middle finger. Or they take the 2 middle fingers and put them together to create the illusion of one middle finger, when in actuality it's 2 very close together.
It's almost believable. It's almost believable. You know,
Got a little
Jackson.
too yucky with the splitting them. in
No,
half.
it's fine. Look, it's great. Jackson wants to know if it's fun being an actress. Jackson, you mean on stage or on TV? We want to let's qualify this a little bit. We're gonna roll the dice anyway and see if she can actually answer. Oh, and you can give an honest answer. Just go ahead and
Okay.
answer both. And which do you prefer? Do you prefer acting on stage? Do you prefer puppeteering, or do you prefer voiceover work? Like, are they fun doing them all, and which do you prefer?
There's a lot there. So as far as whether I prefer stage or TV, it depends on if I'm sick or not. Because it is much easier to perform sick when you're doing TV, because you can always loop it and you don't have to project your voice and the stress of live theater. Staying healthy is the hardest part of doing live theater. That is the hardest part. And I was not always successful at staying healthy. As far as whether I prefer puppetry, face acting, or voiceover, look, I'm just a giant canned ham. I love performing in any way, shape, or form. And sometimes the nice thing about being able to do all of those things is you get the best of all worlds. As a puppet character, I get to explore a really wide range of characters. When you're doing those wide range of characters as a voiceover artist, it's much easier on your back and knees and arms and shoulders, because you don't have to be in those awkward positions to puppeteer. When we were doing Helpsters, you know, you're or Sesame Street, but especially on Helpsters, because we were on location a lot. As a puppeteer, you are literally in the mud, on the ground, with the ants crawling all over you. But when it's cold, you get to be in your coat and your hat and your scarf, and the actor on camera is wearing something very skimpy and is usually uncomfortable and has to keep their makeup all nice. So there are times when it's good to be one, the other, or the other. There are pros and cons to all of. But hey, that's the show business.
You know what
I love, yeah.
What I find fascinating about Sesame Street, and when you have guests on Sesame Street, have you noticed and I mean seasoned actors and actresses and politicians and musicians, none of them interact with the puppeteer. They make eye contact with the puppets, and they are having full-on conversations with the puppets, completely forgetting that you have a hand in a doll and are talking to them. They don't even know you exist in those moments.
Yeah, that means we're doing our job right.
It's just
that's the gig, man. That's the gig.
And I've been guilty of it too. You know, Leslie puts Abby on, and I have literally had a conversation with Abby Kadabi, and I'm like, that's just not even real.
So when I was exploring the notion of wanting to be a Muppet performer when I was in college, and I built my crappy little, I'm not a builder, I built crappy looking puppets just so I could learn how to do it. And I would take the puppets into this, we had suites in our, you had your room, and then you had a common area, right, which we called suites. And you take it out and you start playing around with the character to these, jaded college students, right? Especially this is early 90s, height of ironic, I don't care. And they would look at the puppet And that's when I knew I was doing something right. That they were no longer looking at me. These friends of mine, these people I knew, believed in the puppet. In fact, one of the first puppets that I made, well, not the one of the first, but an early one that was popular was a duck named Norman. His name was Norm. He was a duck. He talked like this. He was, he had one wing. And friends of mine asked to use Norm in their student films, like that puppet. They weren't puppet shows. One was like a love connection game show where he was one of the contestants. The other was, again, a love thing where he was breaking up with a human woman. That was the biggest compliment in the world, that people were asking for this character in their projects that had nothing to do with puppets at all. That they thought the character was that strong. Which, again, I was just starting out.
We have another question about who your favorite puppeteer to work with is. And Ken, do you have an answer? Oh, it's a natural 20. You definitely know that answer.
That's hard. See, because here's the thing you need to know about me. I don't have a single favorite anything.
I'm not your favorite? Wait
ice
a second.
cream flavor. No. Like food, ice cream flavor, show, book, movie. There's no such thing as okay, yes. When I said Duck Duck is my all-time favorite, there's like a bunch clustered at the top. She is at the top of that list, but someone says chocolate or vanilla, I'm like, why not both? So, such as it is with the people that the puppeteers that I work with, I have a different relationship with every single puppeteer that I work with. And that's the beauty of it, is that every performer brings out a different side of me. 'Cause they just evoke a different color. Now, there are people that I've worked with for a really long time, like Matt Vogel and Eric Jacobson. We came up around the same time. We all graduated in high school in 1989. I came in 93, Eric came in 94, Matt came in 95. So I know I have a special relationship with them just because I came up with them. But I think about all the people on Helpsters. I think about people like, I didn't get to work with him much, but I think about people like Jerry Nelson, right? And when I work with Jerry, he brought out a side of me. He made me feel confident to be able to work with him. Or if I was working with Carol, sometimes I'd forget that it was Carol because I was working with my heroes, Big Bird and Oscar. Do you know what I mean? When I work with people like Jen Barnhart, she brings out a side of me that's very different. When I work with Marty Robinson, he brings, and when I assist them too, it's very different too, because sometimes I'm working opposite them and sometimes I'm doing their right hand or doing their feet, and you have a shorthand. When I work with Ryan Dillon, we have a very specific way of working with each other.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Yeah, please.
I just want to explain something to people watching or listening that you may not really realize as you watch a lot of these puppets on TV. In a lot of situations, there are two people working the puppets. So when she mentioned that sometimes she's a right hand, the puppeteers literally are, practically laying on top of each other, working a puppet together. It is watching Sesame Street, watching them shoot Sesame Street, for example. If there is a scene where there's 3 or 4 puppets in the scene at the same time, it is a gaggle of puppeteers on the floor, just huddled around each other. And it's amazing that you all have the spatial awareness to work that closely with each other and not interfere with what each other are doing. Not just the puppets overhead, but just your bodies themselves on that floor.
Yeah. But also just the personalities. Tim Lagasse and I have worked together for so long. When we did Ubi together, we did Seuss together, and when we were doing Helpsters together, it's just like he's my brother, and we sort of share a silly brain sometimes, and the things that we would bring out in each other, we would just be in sync with each other. I was never in a but then there was there was this awful pilot that I did that I will not mention the name of, where I was doing both of his hands, and again, just in total sync with each other. I knew exactly what he wanted me to do, and he trusted me enough to know that I would know what he wanted me to do. I love being in situations like that. I was in a situation with David Rudman where I was doing this silly little pig and he was doing Cookie Monster, and we were just doing this little bit where we had to hold up something that was heavy. And we sort of were kind of coming up with this very fast who's on first, like, you got it, I got it. No, you got it, I got it. I don't got it. You got it, I don't got it. I don't remember exactly how it went. Just cracking each other up and figuring out how to make that work. We do this all the time, and with every single puppeteer, it's a different. They all bring out something, a different wonderful side of me. So I know that it seems like a cop out to say I don't have a favorite, but there are definitely every single person who I've crossed paths with, have been lucky to cross paths with, brings out something always surprising. Oh my gosh, and the people on Donkey, that's a whole different Frankie Cordero and Haley, and it's just I'm a very, very lucky person to work with so many talented people. That's all I can say.
What is the hardest puppet that you work? And hold on, we got to roll. Oh, you don't know the answer to this. So you rolled a 6 for the knowledge check. You got to.
The hardest puppet I ever worked? That would be the time that I puppeteered Wonder Woman's invisible jet. Now, I know that it seems like that would be an easy puppet to perform, because what's there? You'd be surprised how heavy something invisible can be. That's all I have to say about that.
So, before you came on, I asked you if you had any nerd fandoms, because we do a little trivia on this show too, where we give a prize to somebody in chat. We randomly pick somebody. Right now we got Canna Cole.
Okay.
Is gonna win a prize based on your answers to trivia. Okay, and
sorry, Canna Cole. I'm a little scared.
You said you were good with 80s music. You said you were good with some game shows, maybe some Star Trek, but you also said you could talk candy all day long.
Yes.
And I said, how many guests are we going to have that's going to say, I want to do candy trivia? So I've made this trivia myself. This is my own personally made trivia of candy.
I want candy.
And you can see it on your screen, right? I just want to make sure you can see the trivia in the. Okay, here we go.
Yes,
Here comes the first question. In 1995, M&M's replaced what color with blue?
Tan.
It is tan. Gone but not forgotten.
Dude, I remember tan.
What temperature does chocolate melt?
What temperature does chocolate melt?
I can give you a slight hint if you want.
You know, it's funny, just based on the Saris thing, I'm guessing 72 degrees Fahrenheit, but I could be wrong.
You know, you're off. You're off. I would like to point. I was the hint I was gonna give you with thinking of M&Ms was they say, you know, the chocolate melts in your mouth, not in your hand, right? It is so really close to the human temperature. Really close.
Okay. Yeah. So it's,
you want to venture another guess?
No. So 95.
92 degrees.
Oh, okay.
Now I actually knew that in advance. I've done some candy making in my day, and you know, if you heat chocolate too much, it burns. So you got to pay attention.
I do know that, or it seizes, and yeah.
What was the occupation of the inventor of cotton candy?
Oh my goodness. I'm guessing probably some sort of, I want to say like a toy maker, maybe.
Dentist.
Because it was called Candy Floss.
It was
originally,
called Candy
wasn't
Floss.
it?
Yes,
oh
it
my
was.
gosh, that makes total sense. I wasn't even thinking that if I
look, I can't make the trivia easy. If I make the trivia easy.
I know. I just feel bad for our poor contestant.
True or false? White chocolate is not actually chocolate.
True, it is not actually chocolate.
It contains no cocoa.
No cocoa. That's right.
What's the
It's cocoa
chocolate bar that
butter,
was
but-
advertised for its power to give wartime volunteers an endurance capacity of 2 hours during World War II? There was a brand, but also a classification. So I'll take either
I'm just
one.
trying to think. They were given Hershey bars to the soldiers, so wouldn't it have been a Hershey? Would it have been a Hershey bar?
Chocolate crisp bars like Kit Kat.
Oh.
Kit Kat was the brand they claimed would give you a 2-hour endurance boost.
Wow, I wonder if that was and that was for the American soldiers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, okay, maybe I don't know my candy. Shoot.
The Symphony Bar was first introduced in 1998 by which candy company? It is Hershey. Hershey. See, some of them are easy. What do the
Pennsylvania,
M's in
baby.
M&M stand for?
Mars and oh shoot. I thought I knew this. Is Mars one of them?
Mars is one of them.
yeah.
Mars is the first
Yeah.
M.
Mars and oh, I suck. I should know this. I probably know this deep down. I'm so sorry. I give up.
Mars and Murray. Murray?
Yeah.
Is it Murray? Murray?
Shoot.
Finish the brand slogan. There's no wrong way to eat a
Cadbury.
Reese's.
Reese's. Consarn it. I thought it was Cadbury.
Which candy first seen in a
I'm not
movie
having
became a
enough.
bona fide brand?
Which candy first seen in a movie? First seen in a movie?
First seen in a movie.
Wouldn't have been Reese's Pieces, would it?
It would not be Reese's Pieces.
What candy first seen in a movie?
If you don't get the answer, you are going to kick yourself really hard when the answer is...
I'm sure I am. I'm sure I am because I'm sure it's something that's really, really obvious.
Very obvious.
Oh, first seen in a movie. Became a bona fide brand. Became a bona fide candy brand or
Mhm.
became a brand? Oh, this is going to kill me. Wouldn't have been Three Musketeers. It would have been, shoot. I give up. I'm sorry. I'm just not thinking.
I'm not even going to say the answer as I put it on screen.
Oh.
The Wonka brand.
That was the first?
Yep. There were no Wonka candies until the movie, and now nerds and
Well, I know that.
Gobstoppers and Wonka bars.
Right. But, okay, I guess I was confused by the question, the way the question was phrased. I'm sorry. Yes. No. I remember when Toys R Us used to sell the Wonka bars with the graham crackers in
yeah.
it? Yeah, I haven't seen them in years. Those
Wonka bars were actually a good candy bar. You know, it was a chocolate
candy
bar
bar,
with the graham
decent price.
cracker bits.
Yeah,
good.
and it was a good chocolate too.
It was
I don't
a
know
good
who made
chocolate.
it for them. It was good.
Which candy is said to have defined an American generation?
An American generation. Sour Patch Kids?
Hershey's.
No, or Hershey's. Oh, who said it?
You know, I don't know. That was in
Okay,
like every.
I'm just-
That was literally
that
in like
makes sense.
five of the candy trivias that I looked up, and I didn't look up where that answer
makes
came from.
sense. That makes sense.
But okay, listen. We are going to give you an opportunity,
Oh, I'm
a second
terrible.
chance trivia. You said you know commercials of the 80s.
Yeah, I do.
Don't leave home
Don't leave
without
home
it.
with that. American Express.
It is American Express.
American Express.
Where's the beef?
Wendy's.
Wendy's.
Clara
I say this
Peller,
one
baby.
I say this one all the time. The choice of a new generation.
Pepsi.
Pepsi is the choice of a new generation.
generation.
It's not nice to fool Mother Nature.
That would be Imperial margarine. No. Wait. Chiffon. I knew it was margarine. Shoot.
It's okay. Hey, Mikey, he likes it.
Life cereal.
Life cereal. How do you spell relief?
ROLAIDS. Rolaids. Come on.
You're soaking in
You're
it.
soaking in it. Palm olive.
Palm olive. The San Francisco treat.
Rice ding ding oroni.
Rice-a-roni.
Yeah.
I've fallen and I can't get up.
Oh, the Life Alert bracelets.
It is Life Alert.
Yeah.
I don't want to grow up.
I'm a Toys R Us kid.
There's a million
Yep.
toys at Toys R Us that I can play with.
Yeah.
So
Very
see,
good.
we had a fun second chance, but
Okay.
I knew you would get those.
Yes. Good. Phew. Phew. Yeah, you know, it's some of those little tricky things about the candy history that I get stuck on because, you know.
I thought most of the questions were pretty easy once you thought about it. Once you saw the answer,
Yeah.
Hershey's,
Yeah.
the Kit Kat one, and I think the Hershey's one were the two hard ones.
But man, the candy floss, I should have realized, of course.
Candy floss.
Oh, I feel
And then I
feel
tried
like
to-
I've disappointed you, Caitlin. I'm so sorry.
No, how disappointed me? How could you possibly disappoint me? You came on the
Sorry,
show.
lady.
You know how
Sorry,
many people
friend.
are here? You are the second guest, which is
Wow.
just, great
Setting
to
the-
me.
Well, that's nice, but I just feel like, hope I haven't ruined it for everyone.
No, listen, the next week's guest is somebody else I'm really excited about. It is the first guest that I have no personal connection to at all. Her name is Sarah Priebus. She used to be the host of something called, and I don't know if you remember this or not, HQ Trivia. Do you remember HQ Trivia?
Vaguely. I know my husband knows it.
It
big
was an
time.
app on the phone that for like a 2-year period there were just a bunch of documentaries made. I think HBO did a documentary about HQ Trivia. She was the host of HQ Trivia and then went on to do an infomercial for the Shiny Heiny, which was a brush that cleans your butthole. And I know what you're saying, how do you go from HQ to that? That Shiny Heiny infomercial is so legendary that Ellen dedicated an entire month of her show to the Shiny Heiny and had her on the show kind of
I missed the Shiny Heiny entirely.
It is, listen, it's one of those things that when the show is over, go YouTube Shiny Heiny and you will not be disappointed.
I'm sure I won't.
But look, I really appreciate you coming on. What's that?
What a get to get Shiny Heiny lady.
It's more the HQ stuff more than the Shiny Heiny. The HQ kind of for that period of time that they had $1 million games where everybody at home could play and the winner split $1 million prize. It was for a few years
That's
it
right.
was everywhere.
Yeah, you're right. It was everywhere.
And
what happened?
Well, the documentary said that, but there were two hosts. I think one host was Scott Rogowski, and she was the female host of the show, and she got left out of the documentary.
What?
Which is crazy because more often than not, when I remember playing the game, she had hosted it, and when they did the documentary, she got left out, and I am very interested to talk to her about that because she was a very integral part of that show. But anyway, really, I appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
my
Do you want to hit
pleasure.
us with any Yinzer-isness before we go?
I don't know. You could just talk all the damn time. I ain't paying no $10 for no Coca-Cola at the baseball stadium. Just watching the Steelers play, I can't going down to Three Rivers. First of all, gotta pay for parking. Gotta pay through the nose for parking. I ain't gonna do that. I'm just gonna watch it on KDKA or something like that. I don't know. And then we're gonna pick up some meat and pork.
I have one more question that I'm not going to roll the dice for. This is a personal question. Since you're from Pittsburgh, how do you feel about Heinz Ketchup?
No, Heinz. Only Heinz. Only Heinz. Only Heinz. Why? 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 Why have anything else? There's just no reason. There's no reason.
Why do Pittsburgh people get so bent out of shape over ketchup?
I don't know that it's just Pittsburgh people, but I think that we have a hometown pride in Heinz. But Heinz truly is the superior product. Just ask Don Draper.
Right there.
The whole Mad Men episode. I mean, come on. The Heinz campaign. It is a high quality ketchup product.
Is Heinz Ketchup your favorite Heinz product?
Probably. Yeah. Yeah, I can't see. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not big into the 57 sauce. Although, to be perfectly honest, I can't think of the last time I actually tried it. No, it's definitely my favorite.
Well,
Sure.
I don't want to take any more of your time. I promised you an hour. We went an hour and 6. We went an
We're
hour and
ending
6.
on ketchup.
Well, I mean, we were going to end before ketchup, but you brought out the Yinzers, and I was immediately reminded of all the Pittsburgh people I know and their obsessions with Heinz Ketchup,
Wow.
and I was just like, I had to bring it up.
But I don't know. I feel like even if I didn't grow up in Pittsburgh, I can appreciate the thickness and the flavor and the delightfulness of Heinz Ketchup. And Hunt's is just, to me, watery, thin, not as flavorful.
I forgot to tell you, this podcast brought to you by Heinz Ketchup. It's America's finest ketchup.
I'm sure that many fine people work hard to make Hunt's Ketchup. However, this is just personal preference. As I said before, what the hell do I know? And who the hell cares what I think?
Thanks so much, Steph.
Thank you so much, Kate.
Oh, boy.